This is the Vendi Sales Podcast, hosted by Kyle Jagger. Real conversations, sharp insights, and practical tools to help you close smarter and build teams that win.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Vendi Sales Podcast. Today, I am joined by Carole Mahoney, author of Buyer First. Welcome to the show, Carole.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Kyle. This should be fun.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I came across your book, I want to say about maybe 10 months ago. I feel like that sounds about right. After you were on Mike Weinberg's podcast. So Mike is my mentor without maybe even knowing he's my mentor. So been really tuned into his podcast. And then anytime, he recommends a book, I'm going to be happy to jump on it. And then when I started reading it.
His book, Sales Management Simplified, was the first book I ever read on sales management. So he's been somewhat of a mentor to me without realizing it as well.
It's I once heard a great speech by Amy Franco, who's also in the sales space.
I know Amy.
Called the ripple effect, right? Mm-hmm. It's, you might do something here or say something or write something, but through the ripples of time, you don't know how many people and who you impact. That's a great thing to keep in mind. It's like, I might not even see the fruit of my labor, but I'm going to believe in it, and I believe it's going to benefit someone somewhere.
Yeah. I think anyone who puts in the work and effort to write a book that will transform people, that's the mindset that we have. My husband asked me once, he's like, why are you writing all of your secrets in a book and just giving it away? And I said, because if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, then someone can learn from my mistakes and maybe avoid a few of them for themselves.
I love it. And yeah, when I was reading your book, it hit me because it was, it's a sales book, but it also applies so much to starting a business, running a business, entrepreneurship, leading sales team, being a salesperson. Like, it talked to all the facets of my, say, 12-year career. And it was just like, it resonated, and I was like, no, this is good. This is true. And there's some great takeaways from it. I'd say, it might be, I found like two things quite interesting in it was just the concept of collaborative selling, and then as you dive deeper into the mindsets of salespeople, whether it's, what's helping us accelerate or what's holding us back. I found that whole concept as, maybe just a gunslinging sales rep who doesn't think too much of why we do things. That was super cool to just understand kind of the psychology and maybe some of our own personal obstacles that are holding us back from achieving maximum success.
Yeah. And that was one of the unexpected outcomes from the book is, and even in my one-to-one coaching that I do with people, is when they come to me later and say, you know what, I was able to achieve my sales goals or my business goals, but what I didn't expect is how much it would change me as a person, that it would make me a better parent or spouse or even employee or business owner. It actually kind of came with this idea that you can't really be a better salesperson today without becoming a better person. And I think that's where a lot of those mindsets come in, because our mindsets is what influences our behaviors and the results that we get. And, sales is life, in my opinion, that the skills that we learn as salespeople apply to everyday life, and it makes us better people as a result of that.
Oh, totally. Why don't you give kind of a brief, I'm sure many of our listeners haven't read Buyer First, but why don't you give a brief overview of what it is and, a plug, my recommendation, pick it up, read it, because you will definitely learn a thing or two.
Yeah. Well, and the book started, as I said, too, of all of the mistakes that I made when I first started my business and figured that I needed to learn how to sell. And I first started my business as a marketing agency. I was trying to obliterate and make obsolete the salesperson because of the pushy, manipulative, sleazy perception that I had of sales, which, by the way, 7 out of 10 people still do have that perception. And when I realized that we still need salespeople today to help us to make decisions, to help us to feel confident in those decisions, to help us understand what options that we have, that's when I realized that I needed to figure out how to sell and change my own mindset towards sales. And it wasn't just about my mindset of sales is icky, but also even things like getting emotionally involved in things and not being able to listen, or worried what people were going to think of me. And so not asking tough questions or try to get to decision makers. That these were all mindsets and beliefs that I had that were actually sabotaging my ability to learn how to sell and to sell well. And so that is essentially what the book is about, is what is it that buyers today want from salespeople, because they still want to interact with salespeople, but not the one that's just going to pitch or, just show them their thing and tell them that they can do everything that they want, but a salesperson who will actually help them to think about what is the best solution for you, and will even say no if my product or solution isn't the best fit for you. And so what is it that buyers want and demand from salespeople today? And then how do we as salespeople or leaders, how do we align our behaviors to what it is that buyers actually value? And that's where that personal reflection and change starts to happen, because it's not just about pitching your product anymore or making 1,000 dials. It's about how do you actually connect with someone? Because especially today in the age of AI, having that human to human connection is even more valuable than ever. And so we need to be able to be that human being that sellers want. And so I kind of summarized the book in a sentence or two, where we always think of sales as something that we do to other people. I'm going to pitch you on this. I'm going to sell you on this. But what it really is today is it's selling with someone else. It's that collaborative nature that buyers want, and that ability of having a salesperson who has ethics to say no when it's not the right fit, to recommend something else for them. That is the salesperson of today and tomorrow, in my opinion.
So you work with a lot of salespeople and a lot of sales
Yes.
teams. You wrote this book. Where do you see most reps kind of get hung up or stumble in that mindset or that approach? Because, it's to be human is to sell. It kind of seems kind of straightforward. That's not always the case. So where do you see most, especially maybe new salespeople, kind of get hung up in this whole understanding what sales is and how to actually execute it?
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake, number one mistake that I see a lot of new salespeople make, whether you're a business owner or you're working inside of a team in a company, is that they get a script and they follow that script verbatim. And it doesn't matter what the other person is saying or what other kind of clues that they might be getting from that person. They're just going to go through each one of their checklist items because that's what they feel comfortable with, because they don't know what they don't know or don't know what to do in those moments where they have to, be in the moment. And so that is the number one mistake that I see, because they're not actually connecting with the other person. They're just interrogating. They're going through their checklist, making sure that they've done everything that they need to. But meanwhile, they're not actually listening to the other person. They're not asking good, thoughtful questions because they're too busy going through their checklist. And I can't tell you how many times I've listened to a call or analyzed a call where, the buyer asks a question or says something that is the perfect opportunity for a salesperson to dig in a little bit more or offer a perspective, and they just go right on to their next question like it never even happened. And those are the biggest mistakes that I see, is there's this disconnect between what I should be doing and what happens in the call. And so a lot of times it's because of, lack of practice and role playing, lack of experience. But then sometimes I find it's also due to the fact that, because they're new, their sales team or their sales leader is like, just do this, 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 and this. If you just do it the way that I did it, then you'll be successful. And that's not always the case. It's actually rarely the case.
So how do you help teams walk through that process of like, hey, we're here currently, we're reading the script, we're not digging deep, we're not being human. Like, how do you walk them through to now have the tools and the confidence to say, hey, like, I'm going to ask the tough questions, I am going to push back, and I am going to get out of my comfort zone, and I am going to sell.
Yeah. It really comes down to getting as much practice as you possibly can. And so when I'm either teaching students at the business school or I'm working with new sellers, we'll role play in our coaching sessions. We'll practice these particular things, because it's not just about knowing what to do. It's, can you do it? But then there's that third part of, will you do it in the moments that you need to do it and not chicken out? But first comes that, do you know what to do? And then can you do it? And then practicing that until it starts to become comfortable with you. And what I oftentimes will tell my business school students is that, they say, how can I get more practice in? Because we only meet once a week. And so I often will say to them, you can practice on anyone around you. Asking open-ended questions and actively listening to someone is something that you can do at the grocery store, at the restaurant with the waiter, when you're standing in line for the bathroom, with anyone around you. You can practice these techniques. But then when you get into a sales conversation, it feels a little bit more high pressure, because it is. There's money involved. There's an exchange of value involved that raises the emotional quotient of that particular conversation. But the more we can practice that, then we get into those conversations, not that it's going to go exactly the way that you practiced it, but it allows you to then understand how to pivot, how to improvise in the moment with that particular person, because you've gotten enough practice in that you can do that. It's kind of like whether you were doing sports or if you were learning how to play an instrument, you practice it so that when you get on stage, that practice supports you in being able to do it in that moment. So that's number one. And I think number two, and maybe it should be number one, is really understanding and examining your own beliefs that you have about certain activities in sales. Because even if you know what to do and you practice it and you can do it, if you don't have a belief system that's going to support you in executing that in the moment, you'll chicken out, or you'll convince yourself that it's not the right time to ask that tough question, or you won't even actually be listening because you're so caught up in your own thoughts, in your own mind, that you're not even in that present moment listening to the other person. Like, have you ever done a call or listened to a call where it seems like that salesperson is on a completely different plane and not even listening to anything that's going on? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of times because they're thinking of what to say next, or they're trying to control their emotions when they hear an objection, or how do I get them to do what I want them to do? How do I get them to say what I want them to say? These are the thoughts that actually get in your way of being able to collaboratively sell with someone.
I love, maybe you can even talk a bit deeper, because, hey, one of the things people always say is like, hey, every sales trainer, consultant, guru says role play more. Like, yep. role play, right? The thing I hear often is like, okay, like, how do we actually role play well? I love your take on, hey, just go out in life and ask questions and dig deeper. But yep. If you're talking to maybe a business owner who has a small sales team and they're like, mm-hmm. I know we have to role play, but I don't know how to do it with my mm-hmm. team. Are there any things you've seen work well and with the business school or other places where it's like, hey, these are just some simple frameworks or tips or tricks to help role play work better?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that you need to focus on is role play one part of the conversation. And I typically, when I'm starting with students or if I'm starting with clients, we start at the very beginning of the conversation. We actually even start before the conversation happens. How are you preparing for it? How are you sending a confirmation email and building an agenda and collaborating with them before they even show up to the call? And then from one part of the call to the next, we're focused on that. And I typically like to start at the beginning of the call, because the beginning is what's going to set you up for the rest. So how are you opening that call? How are you setting mutual expectations? How are you then diving into particular issues? What are the questions that you're going to ask, and how are you going to respond to certain things? And again, focusing on those micro moments in the call and building off of that. It's when you think of behavioral change, it's a lot harder to do a behavioral change when you're trying to change too many things at once. So if you can focus on micro moments in the call and understand what that means in setting you up for the next part of a call, I think when you stack those on top of each other, it starts to become more realistic, relevant, and it's going to be more likely to stick. One of the things that we also do in our clients is we evaluate what kind of strengths that they have in sales and what areas that they need to improve in, which then gives us a roadmap of where do we need to focus in our role play and in our training and in reviewing our calls afterwards. So if you're really good at setting mutual expectations and you're really good at that first initial discovery conversation, but you're not good at handling objections, then that's what we're going to focus on. A lot of coaching, sometimes they want to focus on your strengths. I focus on the areas that you need to improve on, because Superman is super strong, but if he gets in front of some kryptonite, he's suddenly weak. And so we want to understand what's the kryptonite going to be for you in the next call. And then we focus on that particular piece. So stacking it, micro chunking it so that it starts to build off of it, focusing on the areas where you specifically need to improve. And then I think the third thing that we also do is, yes, do it as much as you possibly can, but even in the role plays themselves, have a framework that you're going to follow. And there's several types of coaching frameworks you can use. I like to use the GROW model, which is what is the goal of the conversation or the outcome that you're looking for? What's the reality? Where are things now? What's the opportunity or the obstacle that you need to get to? And what are you going to do? When are you going to do it? And with whom are you going to do it with? Getting to that next step. And so then understanding that in the coaching framework makes it more relevant. The other thing we always do is we don't just do theoretical role plays. If you have a conversation coming up, or you've just had a conversation, more in preparation for the call you're about to have with the actual person, and act as that particular buyer. And the other thing that I like to do in role plays is I think a lot of leaders will play the role of the buyer and have the salesperson try to sell. I will sometimes switch it around because sometimes they don't know what good is supposed to look like. And so by acting as the role of the salesperson and then them being in the role of the buyer helps them to see, one, what does good look like? But then two, what's it like to be in the buyer's seat? To give them a little bit of a understanding and empathy of what their buyer might be thinking as they're going through this particular conversation. The other thing I love about switching the roles, that the salesperson can play the buyer as well, is a lot of times I find that when salespeople are playing the buyer and they're playing against their manager or their coach or their trainer, that they'll try and throw things at them that they're actually afraid of how to handle. Like, what is the biggest objections that they're going to get? Those are the ones that they're going to throw at you in a role play. So as the coach or the manager or the leader, you can kind of get a sense of where their head is at by how they act as the buyer. And then leveling up that difficulty, right? So if you start with someone who's new and you try to make it really difficult, it's going to be discouraging to them. So start off by small micro chunks, making it relatively easy, and then increasing that to a more higher difficulty level, switching the role plays around, basing it on data of what their areas of improvement need to be, and then trying to do that as much as possible. One of my colleagues, Dr. Stephanie Boyer out of Bryant University, has done some research. And I think her research says that it takes anywhere between 40 to 60 repetitions of something before you start to learn it as a skill. And so if you're only role playing with your manager or with anyone once or maybe twice a week, that's going to need to be a lot more repetitions. And so now that we have AI in place, we can start to design AI role plays to help sellers to get those reps in, so that when they get in front of the human, they have a little bit of practice underneath their belt, a little bit more confidence in being able to do that.
Wow. That's a lot of good information on role playing. One question is, what's a good way to set the framework or the standard for role play? Because I oftentimes will observe team role plays, and it's just like they seem to go like off track or down these weird paths, and like it's just like, okay, like this actually isn't even resembling a sales call anymore. Like this is you guys are throwing some really weird things out here. Is there, when you're working with teams, is there like a framework you say like, hey, like this is the box we're playing inside, and this is like the guardrails we're going to stay within, or like how do you kind of manage those type of situations?
I manage them in the moment typically. And so, if we're doing a role play, I don't just run through the whole role play. We're typically going to stop. If you think of athletics, I'm a huge football fan, and Tom Brady is one of my favorite quarterbacks. Tom Brady had 9 different coaches just on how he threw. And they focused on small things, and he would be in the middle of a pass and they would stop him to correct something. And so I do the same thing in my coaching, where if they're starting to go down a path that doesn't make sense, or they're starting to like trip up themselves, then I'll stop and say, okay, let's go back. What was going through your mind in this moment? Here was how we're going to change that. And we play that one moment over and over again until it starts to become more natural to them. And then we'll go on, and then I might stop them again and say, okay, what was happening here? So that they can start to reflect off of that and make a small little tweak that they do. And then we run through it again. And we repeat that over and over again until by the time they get to the end of the role play and the call, they can then walk into their next conversation with a little bit more confidence, because they've done that back and forth. They've done those micro chunks. They've gotten the rep in. And if they need to pivot, they feel more comfortable being able to do so because they've done some of that already in the role play.
No, I love that, taking the pause mid snap and being like, okay, this is what we see, this is what we change, this is what we need to do. That makes total sense. Now, say, hey, you talk about this in your book, right? It's like, hey, you're a leader, you're a manager, you're a business owner, you've invested in role playing, you got people practicing, and then you see them on the phone or in person or out in the field, and it's like, okay, they're not doing what we've been practicing, right?
Yeah.
Like we agreed to these things, or we set this new standard and we've been practicing it, but we're not actually executing it. And I know you talk about this in the book. Can you kind of dive into, hey, how we can approach that situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first we have to also think of this, all of this is we're trying to help people change a behavior. So before we can get them to actually do the things, we have to first understand what is in it for them. What are the goals for themselves personally? And so, I like to say to a lot of my teams that quotas are about as inspiring and motivating as getting up in the morning, excited to put your feet on the floor and pay your taxes. Like no one ever is excited to do that. It's like, that's what a quota is. You do it because you have to, or otherwise you're going to get fired. And so first identifying what is in it for them. What is the change in their lifestyle, the change in their day-to-day, the change in their bank account? What does it mean for them? Why is that important to them? How does it align with their own personal values? So now the changes that we're trying to walk them through in little small pieces isn't about us trying to get them to do something. It's them trying to achieve something for themselves. So I think that's number one, is that if you have a team or a mentee that you're working with and it doesn't seem to be sticking, do you really understand why they're doing it? Do they really understand why they're doing it and how that's going to impact them personally? So that's number one. And I think number two is giving them the self-awareness to understand what's getting in their way and why. When we do an assessment, we give them a copy of their report. We have them read it and go through and identify where are the areas that someone could beat you or that someone could trip you up. So that when they see how this behavior is influencing this outcome, they're now more aware of it. So that's number two. And then the third part of it, I think, is we have to make sure that we're examining the core beliefs that are causing the behavior. Because you can get someone and drill it into them over and over again, but if they never change the belief that doesn't support the action, then they're never going to do the action. So for example, one of the things that we evaluate for is called the supportive buy cycle. I call it the how you buy is how you sell. So if you're someone who has to have the best price, needs to think it over, needs to do a ton of research, delays making your decisions because you're not sure about it or confident in it, then when a buyer wants to do the same thing with you, you are more likely to have a bad form of empathy with them and say, oh, you need to think it over? Of course you do. I would do the same. Oh, you need to have a discount because you need a better price? Of course you do. I would do the same. And so it's that belief that then causes the behavior, even though they know better. And so how do we get them to start to change that belief? And again, back to small things, small changes over a period of time is what's going to get them to change that belief. Now, all of that being said, one of the reasons why I also train business owners and leaders in how to hire is that changing beliefs and mindsets takes a lot of time. I mean, we've built a lifetime of thinking this way and behaving this way, and it's not going to change overnight. And so that's why hiring a person who already has enough of those supportive beliefs and mindsets to do the actions is key, because you can't wait 9 to 12 months for someone to change their mindset in order for them to be able to sell. It's trying to squid a square peg into a round hole. It's not going to work. So by first starting with someone who's most likely to have the belief system that's in line with your buyer and aligned with your market and how your company operates is going to make it a lot easier for that training and coaching to stick. And knowing that they still need to be able to do that work to understand what is it that's getting in their own way. So the goals, the self-awareness and the assessment, but then also making sure that you're hiring someone who is suited for the role to begin with. I think those are the things that most people miss. I love it when business owners will come to me and say, well, they're so good at talking to people. Like they can talk to anyone. Why can't they sell? Being a personable person doesn't mean that you actually have sales skills. And I think that's one of the blinders that a lot of leaders have. I'm going to hire someone who's athletic and therefore competitive. I'm going to hire someone who's in their industry that already knows everything from our competition. Doesn't mean that they have the sales skills to sell in your company with your buyer.
Are there certain beliefs you see like across the board that salespeople need to have, or the top performers typically have, or is it really dependent on industry and team and company values and all these things?
It depends on the role that they have to fulfill and who they're selling to as far as which beliefs and mindsets are the most important. So for example, if you have someone who's filling an account management role, you want them to have a certain level of a need for approval because you want them to keep people happy and coming back. You're managing an account. versus someone who's going out and trying to find new business. You don't want them to have a high level of need for approval, because they'll never do the risky thing and call someone cold or try to get to a decision maker or disrupt something in order to get through. So there's different circumstances in which different beliefs and mindsets are going to be helpful. But definitely you want to be able to have a certain level of strength in those, because if you are worried about what people are going to think of you, then you're never going to reach out to people. You're never going to go to decision makers. If you can't manage your emotions in the moment, then you're not going to be able to listen to anyone enough to know what to ask yet, because you're too busy either calculating your commission in your mind, or what the next step is going to be, or what the next question needs to be, or how am I going to handle this particular objection? Those are going to get in your way across the board. Those are things that aren't easy to fix. Some things are easier to fix, like the supportive buy cycle. That is one of the easiest things that you can fix, because you just need to change the way that you make your own buying decisions. And there's a framework for that. Things like being able to recover from rejection. I find in corporate sales teams that that's not as much of an issue, but for business owners and small business owners who are trying to sell, it is a major issue. Because selling as an entrepreneur is much different than selling in a company. You're selling someone else's stuff. You don't have an emotional attachment to it. They can reject it all they want. It doesn't have anything to do with you. Versus an entrepreneur or a business owner who it's your services or your technology or your product that you've thought up, that you've put all of this effort into, and they reject it, it feels very personal. It's a different dynamic based on the situations.
That's so true. It's if you look to hiring, like, are there ways we can better understand people's current belief systems and filter for them and understand, maybe more of who we're getting before we get them?
Yes. There's a lot of assessments that are out there. There's predictive index is one. That's many others that are out there. Strength Finder, which are all really great for general employees to understand how they work and and how they tick. But what it doesn't do is kind of like hiring that person who's really good at talking to people. That doesn't mean they're going to be successful in sales. It's a different dynamic. And so having an assessment that is very sales specific. So we use one that's from Objective Management Group. It is very specific to sales behaviors and activities. We've done this over 30 years. There's 2.5 million professionals that have taken it. So we have a lot of data, billions and billions of points of data, to be able to understand the role that someone's in and how it compares to something else. And so we can use that data to be predictive of how successful is someone going to be in this role when they take the assessment. So it's a data-driven understanding what's going on underneath the resume, underneath the interview. And having a very structured interview process with that, where you have a scoring matrix, you have more than one person in the interview so that you can reduce some of those cognitive biases that are happening, that you do phone screens without video so that you don't take that first impression sort of a bias at place. And you use that data to then see who can truly have the skills, and using a behavioral style interview to then be able to understand, will they align with our buyer? Will they align with our company values? And moving them through that process in a very structured way that's data driven reduces the amount of errors that you're going to make by like 71%. When you see that a third of new sales hires are like fired within their first year, that's a major improvement on what we typically see. And the fact that only, I think 16% of salespeople are making 83% of the revenue in companies today, we need to figure out how to hire better for the role that we're trying to fill and who aligns with our buyer best. I think that's one of the other biggest mistakes that people make, is they think, I'm going to hire someone with industry experience because they know our industry. But do they know your buyer? Do they know your differentiation in the market? Can they sell to those people or with those people? That's another question mark that I think that people start to look over. They just assume that they're going to figure out and know what to do, because somehow we think salespeople just know what to do automatically when they get into the role. But it's unlike any other role that you hire for, because unlike an HR person or a finance person where they have a clear job description and have all of the resources and everyone's going to support them in it, in sales, you're being fought against at every step of the way, from your buyers, from everyone in the company. Like, you're in a constant battle to get to the results. So therefore, hiring a salesperson is very different than any other role that you're going to hire in your company, because it's not like any other role where you get supported all the time. You're always in a battle of some kind.
No, I love that. It's so true. And I'm talking to a lot of business owners, like they know it's different and they feel it's different.
They just don't know how.
But yeah, they don't know what to do with it, right? Like oftentimes I get told, hey, it's like, it feels like sales is like this mystical thing or like this gray area. And it's like, I don't know how to mentor them. I don't know how to coach them. I don't know how to measure them. Like, it's like, I feel like just good people make it happen. I don't know how to like replicate it or duplicate it or even understand what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's common misdeception. And especially for business owners and entrepreneurs who've never had to sell themselves. Like, you don't know what that's like or that's why I always encourage every business owner I work with or entrepreneur, sell for at least 3 to 6 months so that you know what it looks like or what it should look like and what the difficulties are. They give you a clear picture of who is it going to be successful in this particular role. Otherwise, you're going to get a salesperson who comes in an interview and sells them on the idea of hiring them, and that's the only sale they'll ever make.
Yeah. And we don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
Want that. I think another quote, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was just listening to another one of your podcasts the other day, and you said oftentimes buyers believe that it's like they need to be liked to sell, or it's their goal to, it's their goal to get people to like them so that they buy them. Right. And you're like, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And can you walk us through that? Because I know that's 100% in conversations with people. It's like everyone loves them. Everyone loves her. She's great. She's fantastic. Sales results aren't there.
Yeah. Well, and it's this thing where you can't. So when I say you don't need to be liked in order to sell, it doesn't mean you can be a jerk, right? Like, you're not going to get anywhere if you just keep ticking people off, right? Like, I've worked with someone like that. Like, they would just purposely try to tick people off. Like, somehow that made them different somehow. But all it is that they couldn't hear the message that you're saying because you're a jerk. But that doesn't mean that just because someone likes you, that they're going to trust you, that they see you as competent, that they see you as capable of something. Yes, they need to be able to like you in order to have a conversation, but that's not what's going to carry you through from them actually investing and buying from you. And so you have to be able to display trustworthiness. You have to be able to display competency and understanding of them and their world and the challenges that they have and why they matter to them and the impact that it's going to have on them. If you don't have those things, then it doesn't matter how much they like you. And in fact, sometimes you might have to say no to your buyers. If you're always telling people what they want to hear because you think that they want to like you, they cannot trust you. Because who trusts the person that just says yes to everything, that tells you exactly what you want to hear? No one does. At least no one who understands that that's what's actually happening. And so, yes, you need to be the person that people will talk to, but you don't have to be that person that everybody loves all of the time. But you have to be the person who's willing to say no, who's willing to say this is not the right fit for you. Even if you get upset with me, you'd be more upset with me if you invested this money in something that wasn't going to work. And even referring them to someone else that might be a better fit for them. That's how you build trust, not by telling them what they want to hear.
100%. I always say, hey, it's not your job to make friends.
Right.
Like it's like,
your job is to help people make decisions they feel confident in, that they don't feel that they're going to have regret later on. That is a salesperson's job.
And when you do that really well and you do that repetitively for years, you're going to make friends along the way, just naturally, right? Yeah, but that's not the objective.
And I have clients of mine who've become friends because, it doesn't happen all of the time, but there's sometimes that it does. But it's because, again, not just because you're a nice person and you're fun to talk to, but because you're the kind of person who has values that they stand behind and are willing to stand up for, even if it means that someone's going to get upset with you.
100%. We're closing in on time here, but I did want to kind of just get your take. I love to ask people who write books, because you try and cram everything you've experienced and learned and seen to be true into one book. But if there's like one or two key findings or takeaways or things you learned along the way of writing your book that you're like, if you read this, like, these are the things to take away with you, what would those be?
So for this book, for Buyer First, the thing that I would have them take away from it is, one, selling isn't something you do to others. It's something that you do with them. I think the second thing is that sales skills are life skills, so that the skills that you learn, either a business owner or an entrepreneur or inside of a company, that these are skills that will make your life better, will make you a better human being, will make everyone around you better as well. Because when you think about it, sales is about helping people make decisions. It's informing them. And all of those are life skills that we have every day. And I think the third thing, and I have a hard time saying 1, 2, and 3 because they're all equally important to me. But I think the third thing is that your beliefs, what you allow yourself to think every day, will become your behaviors and will manifest themselves in the results. And it's not woo-woo-y. It's not anything other than hard, cold facts. Because the more our brains repeat something to ourselves, because our brains keep believing this, it will start to then find ways to make those things happen. And when we change our beliefs into a direction and we want to go in, there's nothing we can't do.
That's powerful. That's so powerful.
I mean, think about it this way. 100 years ago, if you had told people that we would have, things like internet and Zoom videos and all of the things that we have and flying airplanes, all of the people would have said you were crazy. But someone believed in it enough and saw the vision of it enough that they actually made it happen. Because 100 or 200 years ago, everyone would have thought the things that we do today were crazy. So what is the crazy thing that you can believe in that you can make happen? Because if we can do the things that we see today, then there's not anything we can't do. I mean, we have flying cars now. Literally, we have flying cars now.
That's a great challenge to everyone listening. It's what's the one crazy thing that you believe in that you can go make happen in this lifetime. And it doesn't need to just be sales, but like you said,
anything.
Prove
it to yourself that you can make something happen just by the thoughts and the beliefs that you have. And that doesn't mean you just sit around and think about it. But if you believe it enough, it will compel you to start doing something about it. I had an experience recently where I had this crazy idea and I started putting some things behind it. And lo and behold, the more I started thinking about it, things started happening. And I started doing things and talking to people about it. And now we're actually doing it. I'm building an AI coaching platform, which I'm like, that's crazy. I'm not a tech person. I'm not a tech founder. I don't know how to code. Who am I to be able to do this particular thing? And now 6 months later, we're actually building it. And it's getting to like phase 1 ready. So if I can do that, anybody can do anything.
That's going to be amazing. How can people stay up to date on your journey as you create that? Because I know everyone listening is saying, hey, like what are resources and tools for my team? Hey, one is the book, Buyers First. Buy it for your team, study it, make it part of your sales meetings, and then the sales AI coach. Like, where can they keep up to date on that? Can they?
So yes, so you can go to learninggames.ai is where where we're going to be building the platforms. You can also go to sellme.ai, which is where the platform is actually going to be hosted. You can follow me on LinkedIn because we're going to be posting about it there. And if you also go to unboundgrowth.com and you sign up for our newsletter or pretty much anything, then you'll get a notification through there as well when we actually start releasing it in beta.
That's amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to go sign up for your newsletter so I can stay up to date to that. Thank you so much for joining the call today. Follow Carole on LinkedIn. Pick up her book, Buyers First. It's on Amazon and Audible, I believe.
Yes, it is.
Give it a listen, give it a read, study it with your team. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyle. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Everyone else, like I always say, leaders, get in the trenches and go sell with your team. Until next time, have a great week.